A very important aspect of Facebook ad management when you're starting to really scale up campaigns is going to be the ad placement. Ad placements are not something that you're particularly concerned about when you're first getting started. So, to give you an example, I was running a couple of very high reach campaigns, reaching over 1 million people. And what I started to notice was that I would get something like 1,000 clicks, but no purchases. Now, in a case like that, I wasn't actually trying to get immediate sales. I was more focused on the long term. So, what's going to happen in 6+ months in terms of sales and revenue? But in this case, with 1,000 clicks, I would expect there to be at least some purchases, but there weren't. So, the problem here was the placements. I was getting a lot of junk clicks from mobile app placements. So Facebook was placing ads on mobile apps that Facebook doesn't own, so part of the audience network. I was generating a lot of clicks from people that weren't actually interested in the product and certainly not interested in purchasing it. So what I had to do was go and omit those app placements. Now, that's a situation you may run into. So the place where we manage ad placements is in the ad set. So just a reminder that in the Facebook ad manager, a lot of your key decisions around targeting and placements is going to happen at the ad set level. In other platforms, this would be called the campaign level, but instead in Facebook, campaign is a higher level organization. So this is the ad set I'm in, new awareness ad set. And if I scroll down, you can see where the targeting is, etc. And this is the part I'm most interested in, is the placements. So the default is going to be something automatic. So what that's going to do is Facebook is going to decide where to place your ads, whether it's going to be on Instagram, on Facebook, and Messenger, whether it's going to be in the feed or it's going to be in stories, it's going to be in all these different placements. And it's going to optimize for whatever the objective of the campaign is. So whether you're trying to generate leads, for example, or conversions, and you can pretty much trust Facebook to do that. If you are trying to get conversions or sales or leads, Facebook can measure that and optimize accordingly. The problem is when you start doing something like brand awareness or reach campaigns, because instead what Facebook is going to do is going to try to optimize for impressions. But Facebook doesn't actually know which impressions are the most valuable. So to determine that, you would actually have to do some sort of research into the psyche of the people that saw the ads to see, for example, if they remember it or if they associate your brand with certain buying situations or triggers. So for example, perhaps you just incorporated your business. Did you think of a particular lawyer to help you? Or are you thinking about a certain web designer to develop your website? Or are you thinking about somebody else to help develop your contracts, etc.? Those kinds of things aren't going to be trackable within the advertising system, so Facebook can't actually optimize. Instead, what it's going to do is optimize for a proxy, which is impressions, and a lot of impressions are actually going to be pointless. Just because something showed up in their screen and in the far right corner of Facebook doesn't actually mean that you've had any cognitive impact on the psyche, on the consumer behavior. And in long term, when you're actually trying to scale a brand and achieve massive market share, we can't just focus on hard metrics like conversions. We need to be focused on psychological metrics like persuasion, brand awareness, and whether our brand is linked to buying situations, even if those sales are not happening immediately. They might not happen until another 6 months or even a year into the future. So that's why I don't trust automatic placements in situations like that. Instead, what I would do is manual placements. So you can decide, for example, if you want to run it on Facebook and Instagram, which is generally what you're going to do in most cases. And then you can make a decision as to whether to omit the audience network, which with something like a brand awareness campaign is probably a conservative thing to do, omit that, and also omit Messenger. And then you can go through and see different clusters of placement. So you could check off whether you want to be in the Facebook feed, which is like a standard ad that you would want to see. Same thing with Instagram. So you'd probably leave those checked. Facebook Marketplace is something I would often omit because when people are on Marketplace, they're actively searching for something in particular. So your ad may not get noticed, right? If I'm searching for a Mini Cooper, I'm looking for Mini Coopers. And unless that's what you're selling, and chances are you're not selling what they're searching for, they're probably not going to pay attention. Now, empirical evidence may suggest otherwise, but this would be an intuitive guess. And you can decide here which feeds you want to be in or which not to be in. Being in stories and reels, probably pretty good. Attention spans tend to be a bit shorter where people are just sort of rapidly flipping through. But if it's relevant, if it's noticeable, if perhaps you're tying your brand to another brand they recognize, then that should embed themselves. Then your message should embed itself into the psyche of the viewers with stories and reels. Perhaps not as effective as the feeds, but you can always take a look at your data, take a look at some research that perhaps you do yourself to see which placements are getting the most effectiveness. Now you can make decisions of whether you want in-stream videos, you want overlays, whether you want to show up in search or messages or in articles. A lot of these I opt out of, but this isn't necessarily empirically established that you need to omit these. Something that I would be very conservative about, however, is the absent sites. Very often, you're probably going to want to omit this, and an indicator of that would be looking at things like an exaggerated click-through rate, suggesting those placements are garbage.